Hello YouTube. Well, a lot of you might be wondering why your DJI motors are making rough sounds and creating a lot of vibration in your videos that you guys are producing. Today I have one of these 2212 920 kV standard DJI motor that has been making quite a bit of sound and vibrations, and the reason for this is that DJI uses a real small, minimal amount of grease in their bearings. And I even found in some of their motors, they don't even use the same bearings a lot of times. I found that, well, here's one of the bearings right here. I took apart one of the motors. This is called a sealed bearing. And the majority of these motors have shielded bearings, meaning that there's a little C-clip that closes these bearings together, kind of like what this looks like on the outside right there. You can't probably really see with this camera, but there's a compression ring that seals the shield, which is that little washer looking thing. It seals these bearings shut, and these are actually really good bearings. I like them because you're able to take them apart and essentially repack them with grease. They don't come with very much grease, and that's why the motors tend to get the bad vibration and bad sounds when they're spinning like this. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you guys how to take these motors apart, take the bearings apart, and put white lithium grease into them, which they say white lithium grease is heat proof, or I don't know if it's heat proof, but resistant to heat maybe. So on the back of them they have this little E-clip, and underneath the E-clip is a bronze bushing that separates the bearing from the clip itself. I want to pull it off in a way that it's not going to go flying across the room, which I'm really good at, making them fly across the room and losing them in my carpet. Pop the clip off. I slide the motor back a little bit. Get that bronze bushing off. And you can see the dust and the dirt built up on the bottom of this motor. That's because whatever grease that was in there maybe heated up a little bit and kind of slipped through the shield and gathered on the outside, which made it gather up dust. So you take it off like this, and you can see that there's two bearings, one on the inside of the stator, one on the outside. Sometimes these bearings are kind of hard to press out. If you can find the easiest one to get out first, go ahead and push that one through. Be careful not to damage the bearing. You push too hard and you'll push the shield in and it'll damage it. These ones kind of seem like they're a little stuck. Sometimes I found it's easy to put it back on and kind of push it from the side. And push it out a little bit. So we got the one bearing out. I suggest for the other one, if it's still pretty complicated to get out, you just get a wooden dowel and push it through so you don't damage it any more than it already is damaged. So there you have it. You have the two bearings out. Before you take the bearing apart, kind of wipe it down a bit. so you don't get any dirt on the inside of it. Looks pretty good. So what holds this shield on this bearing is a little compression ring or a snap ring. You want to get a straight pin, being careful not to poke yourself with it. There's a separation between the ring right here. You can kind of get the needle underneath it. And just push it out like that. That's the compression ring. And you flip it over and just kind of tap it on the table a little bit. The shield will pop out. Just like that. Kind of hard to hold. There's two sides to the shield. There's a beveled end that faces out towards the center. That's the outside of the shield. So when you put this back together, make sure that the highest part of this shield is facing out of the bearing. There's two sides to this bearing. The inside, where the race sits and the bearings sit into the race. Kind of looks like this. Take it apart. Just a little black or a golden brown race that holds the bearings in place. It's kind of made out of plastic. So what you want to do is get yourself some white lithium grease and your straight pin. Just kind of dab your pin on it. And you don't want to put a whole lot into this bearing. So the more you put into the bearing, it slows the RPMs down. And that's probably the main reason why they don't put too much grease into it, is so you have a higher revving bearing. Just kind of spread some on the inside of that bearing like that. And go ahead and get your shield, being careful not to drop it on the ground. You guys are working with really small parts here, so really want to have patience. Be as careful as possible that you don't lose any of these parts onto the floor. I use a little box cutter. It helps to pick up these parts. And it kind of helps to set this compression ring back into the bearing. So you want to start with one side of the compression ring, fit it into the groove. And using your box cutter, it seems to help me put these fittings back in. Just like that. Examine it real well to make sure that that compression ring is sitting into the groove. You don't want to have any failure in the motor while it's flying and lose our copter. So you can go ahead and turn the bearing around and do the same thing. Pop the little compression ring out. Oh, see, I just lost that one. There it is. Tap it until the shield pops off. And that's the other side where the bearings are sitting in the plastic race. That's really about all the grease you want to apply to it. You really don't want to put too much on there. And remember, the highest part of the shield is towards the center and it's facing out, so it leaves the groove open for your compression ring. There you have it. This bearing's been repaired. A lot of times I test the bearing out by sticking it on the shaft on the very end like this and holding it kind of tight and spinning it. If you feel any vibration coming out of that bearing, that's an indication that it probably lost all of its grease, or it may have to be replaced. A lot of times you can get by just by doing what we just did. Be careful you don't create any more damage. And that made a big difference, I can tell. So go ahead and test the other bearing out and see how it feels. Usually it's just one bearing that's bad. And like, you know, I can feel a big difference in just this bearing alone. This bearing feels like it's brand new. So I won't even take this bearing apart, I'll just leave it as it is. Go ahead and reassemble this motor. Take a rag and, while we have the motor apart, and kind of wipe the inside of these magnets out a little bit. Get whatever dust you can out of there, and dirt. Sometimes if you're flying out in the cold weather and you guys got snow out, like me, I fly in the snow. I'll tend to get these motors wet sometimes. You get a little bit of rust building up around the stator part of the motor. I get some 600 grit sandpaper, or even 1,000 grit. It's a lot better. Just kind of gently rub the outside. Whatever rust is on there, it's gonna come off. Before you put the motor back together, make sure you observe the inside of it. That you didn't get any metal shavings stuck on the inside of these magnets, or you didn't pick up your clip that holds the motor together and get it stuck in there. Obviously, when you go to put the motor together and you don't have your clip anywhere, well, it could either be on the ground or stuck to one of these magnets on the inside, or you may have picked up something else that will later on jam your motor, cause your quadcopter or hexcopter, whatever it might be that it is you're flying, fall from the sky. And if you're flying FPV, you got it out there a little ways, you don't want to lose it because of something like this. So just kind of pre-flight your motor out. Make sure that's operable. So you put it back on your aircraft. Just kind of wipe everything down a little bit, get all the extra dust and grease off of it. You might as well, since the motor's torn apart. This will save you guys some money. I know me there in the beginning, I was getting vibration in my motors and thought my motor was trashed. So I'd be out there on eBay buying new motors, spending $100 for 4 motors. waiting a week for them to be shipped to me. Really all I had to do was just take these bearings apart and apply a little bit of grease to them. Make sure you put these bearings in as straight as possible so that they don't bind up. You don't have a problem later on taking them out. And also another thing, a lot of times when you go to put the can over the motor, it'll tend to want to push the back bearing out, so make sure you keep your finger over the bearing so it doesn't shoot it across the room, because when it goes in with some force. And if you don't have your finger over that bearing and it's sitting in there a little loose, it'll shoot it across the room. So there we go, we got the motor kind of put back together. And the last things we got to do now is kind of wipe off the bronze bushing. Set it on there. Make sure that your groove is exposed, so when you put the E-clip on there, it fits on there nice and tight. Last thing you want to do is think that this clip is sitting on there, and it's really not. You go to fly off, and next thing you know, you have a flyaway motor. And again, your aircraft dropping to the ground. So with one hand, just kind of fit it into the groove. Kind of helps if you get a flathead screwdriver. Put one finger on the side of the shaft so that if the screwdriver falls off the clip, you won't lose your clip across the room or onto the ground. You'll hear it kind of clip in. Don't be fooled. It'll be sitting on there halfway sometimes, and that'll create your motor to separate when you go to fly. So just kind of move it around and just kind of make sure that it's really on there good. And there we have it. Well, I hope this video helps you guys, save you guys some money, and I'll be posting a link on my YouTube page where you guys can buy extra bearings, so you guys can just swap them out. If you damage your bearings in this repair, I'll be able to sell you guys some. But try this first. I think this will solve a lot of your guys' problems out there and keep some money in your pocket for going out there and buying more motors. If this video helped you, subscribe and give me a thumbs up. Alright, YouTube.